everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. So today I have something very exciting for you. We are going to take a look at my latest eBay purchase because naturally, but today it's totally different than any of the other ones that I've shown you before, which is why I'm so excited. So I'm going to do kind of a sort of unboxing. Technically I already took it out of the box and then remembered, wait, I should do an unboxing video on this. But this latest purchase is not a bodice. It is actually a tea gown in a princess cut style. So I'm really excited about that because it's not something that you see very often. At least I think never seen one available on eBay, and if it is, it's like a really fancy one for a really high price. This is a really plain one. It's a plain brown linen, and it was for a really good price. So it's not in the best of shape, but you know what? It's still such a cool cut. I bought it as a research piece because I'm working on my 1890s Elsa right now, and 1890s Elsa is in a princess dress style, meaning that it's all one piece bodice all the way down to the hem. So from shoulder to hem, basically, it's all one piece. And no waist definition is what I mean by one piece. And it also has, or will have, I haven't done it yet, but it will have the little gathered or pleated little bits in the back that harkens back to the 18th century in those watteau pleats. And that's something that you see a lot on wrappers and tea gowns, and that sort of loungewear style of the bustle and then 1890s eras. So that's what this is, at least as best as I could tell from the listing. I'm really excited about it because, again, it's not just a plain bodice, it's a full dress. So it goes all the way top to hem, and it's 1890s and has those lovely huge sleeves. So it's really cool. The kind of the best thing that I can describe it to you is this style of this truly Victorian pattern, except the 1890s version. So big sleeves, but it does have those pleats like I was mentioning that are on this pattern. All right, let's get going. So let's unfold her. I have not unfolded this yet, so this will be exciting. We'll start with the bodice. There's definitely a lot of tears in this. There's tears on the sleeve. Some of them have been stabilized or mended a little. This one, we had a stabilization stitch put around the tear and then a mend down here. This one has been really roughly mended. Oh my gosh. We've got some like Frankenstein style mends on this this dress here. Some just really like the world's roughest mends, but at least someone has kind of tried to help stabilize it. So as I think I mentioned earlier, this is a linen outer, and then the inside is cotton. And I want to make sure that she's laying down nicely because those pleats on the back there. So let's get her to lay down nice and flat. Now, as you can see, she's got lovely, voluminous sleeves. Look at those sleeves. So just because of the sleeve, we can pretty easily date this to really the mid 1890s, that kind of like 1894, 1895-ish era, just based on the sheer volume in this sleeve. Gorgeous leg of mutton shape, all cut in one. I love just noticing this, that you can tell that this trim, which is a little braid, which was just like really roughly hand, almost practically basted, the stitches are so big, but it was just little braid that was put on. You can tell it was put on first, and then they did up the seam, and they didn't care that the braid didn't match. So that's fantastic, because I know all of us usually when we sew, we're all like sticklers for that kind of thing, but you know what? They weren't. We spend a little too much time. Ooh, and look at this. There is a pocket right here, right at the end of the, in fact, that's like perfect length. Look at that. Right at the end of the sleeve here, we get a little pocket. So this pocket is on the exterior of the garment. It's torn at the top, and it's very narrow. My hand is actually too large to not put any strain on this pocket, so I cannot feel the bottom of the pocket from where I am, but I think I'm close. I think it ends about here, and my hand is here. So, but that's a nice deep pocket right on the front. Oh, and there's a matching one on each side. So she's got two lovely pockets in her loungewear. And then let's look at this bodice construction here. So we have what appears to be no, I'm wrong. I thought this was a full seam right here. This is actually a dart, and the dart ends right above the pocket. So it's been kind of pressed down, but the dart ends right here. So we have a dart here in the front, a second but much shorter dart here also in the front, and then the side seam, yeah, the side seam is right next to that over there, and that goes all the way from armpit to hem, that side seam. So this linen is, I would call fairly rough, but it is really thin also. It's quite stiff feeling. I don't know much about linen, to be perfectly honest, but I'm pretty confident that this is linen, and the listing also did say it was linen, so they thought so as well. And then the inside is a rough cotton. It's not a polished cotton at all. I would say it's just like a lesser quality. It's not soft at all. It's stiff, but it's also still very thin. It's very lightweight. I mean, like, this is a summer sort of outfit. You would not wear this probably except for summer because it's quite thin. And God, those pleats on the sleeve are just gorgeous. Now, it has hooks and eyes, but they only go down to, what is that, like 4 inches below the waist. So those hooks and eyes stop right here, and then it looks like either someone at some point fixed it and closed up this section, because this looks like those later kind of fix-it stitches. So I don't know if originally this opening went down further, or if it started to rip and someone was like, we gotta save it, let's make some rough stitches. See if I can find anything out here by doing this. Actually, I mean, I thought they were rough stitches, and some of them might be, but this opening does look like it was intended to go down farther than what it currently is. So I don't know, maybe someone just decided they didn't want it that far, or maybe a lot of the hooks and eyes fell off. There's not that many hooks and eyes left on here. Let's see, we've got 6 hooks and 6 eyes, but not in the same places. Now the cotton inside is shredding really, which is interesting because I don't usually see that with cotton. But as you can see here, it's really quite shreddy. And then here we've got that Frankenstein stitching of the outer too. So this section is very delicate. This is definitely way more delicate than the last bodice video that you saw, which I will link here. Which is funny because that one was silk and this one is linen and cotton, which you think of as being really sturdy. Over here we have what feels like a much smoother cotton as a little facing. Now I don't know if this is a later addition. My gut instinct is yes, it is, just because it looks like the threads that we're whipping down in here, these black threads that were probably original, it looks like they go underneath this little facing bit that has gone on there. So that might just be kind of a stabilizing bit. It's hard to tell with something like this that has been so mended what was original and what was not, and when it was mended and when each bit of it was mended, just because it's been very, very mended. Really, like a lot of mending going on here, a lot of holes, and in some places this linen is kind of shattery too. This is the sleeve right here, and you can see there's just a lot of kind of, it almost looks like the damage you would expect on wool when it's been moth-eaten, but as far as I know, moths don't go for linen. Again, I don't know linen very well, so if that's wrong, please correct me. Yeah, just very interesting. Again, very fragile feeling. Let's take a closer look at this neckline. Now we have more of this braid trim. It's almost like it almost seems like a soutache type trim. We have more of this all over the neckline, just like we had on the sleeves and on the pockets. And we have a little folded down collar here, which you can see on the inside of the collar that the running stitches of the braid, they're just there, but then you flip it down so it doesn't matter. And it doesn't feel like there's any sort of stabilizer or anything in there. My guess is that it's probably just, I think just 2 layers of the linen. I don't think there's even anything else inside there at all. Again, this is a very lightweight, summery type outfit. The collar shape is really interesting here because this has been pleated into place. So we have 2 knife pleats here, and then right over kind of the apex of the shoulder we have a box pleat, and then it goes back into more knife pleats until we have an inverted box pleat in the center back. So that's just a really interesting style choice. The box pleat on the shoulder is actually pleated both top and bottom, but it is significantly deeper at the top than it is at the bottom. All of the rest of them, I guess they all kind of still have a pleat by the time they get to the bottom of the collar, but it's very, very shallow, maybe 1/8 of an inch, probably. In some places I feel like this braid is almost holding together the shoulder. Again, it's in pretty rough condition here, but I love the shape of this collar with all of the pleats. So the seam of where the collar meets the rest of the body is actually right underneath this top braid right here. So you can just see the seam at the very center, and then the rest of it is hanging out under that braid. They've put it perfectly on the seam all the way around. Well, actually they ran off the seam a little bit right here, but it's all the way around otherwise, and so it's really hiding where that seam is, making it almost look like one complete garment all the way from neck down, but it's really from kind of almost a low shoulder down, since it's just got that yoke in there. But I really like the way that the pleats on the collar mimic the pleats on the sleeve as well. In fact, they really, really do, because although they don't line up, the pleat on the sleeve also has a box pleat. Oh my god, that's a deep box pleat. That is like a 2-inch box pleat under here. Look how far my fingers are under there. So they also has a box pleat on the shoulder, but again, it's not lined up. The box pleat on the neck is here. The box pleat on the shoulder is here. So that's amusing to me that they don't match. And then there's 4 pleats and 4 pleats, but they're way wider. Oh, and really, really deep. Oh my god, these are deep pleats on the front. Jeez, all that volume getting in there. And then on the back, still deep, but like not quite as deep. And they're much, much closer together on the back of the shoulder. So I think that is just so cool. Again, we've got a lot of men's in there. And again, this one's even worse than the other sleeve. Totally does not match up, that trimmed up. Look at that. I'll bet like any customer that I know, if they did that, they would be like, nope, redoing that. Can't live with that. But including probably, definitely myself. I wouldn't be able to live with that. But hey, they did, and that's cool. Okay, so I just noticed this sleeve, the left sleeve, appears to all be one piece. Yeah, she's all one piece, just one seam on the inside of the arm, but otherwise one piece. But this sleeve over here is pieced. So you can see there is a seam right here that's going across, and so it comes from way up here. I think this might be on the bias. A lot of 1890 sleeves are on the bias, and I think this one is too. So that seam comes from up here on the shoulder, goes through the pleats, around over here, and then finally meets up with that inside arm seam right here, kind of at the, almost at like the elbow crook. And that's not all. We also have a little piece in the armpit. So she's also pieced right in the armpit. This is a tiny little piece, but I didn't see it on the other side. Nope, the other side's all one. So, I mean, 1890 sleeves eat up a lot of fabric, and a princess seamed dress eats up a ton of fabric. So it doesn't really entirely surprise me that, you know, that would happen. Let's take a look at the inside of the bodice. I really can't get this all the way open because it is closed just right here. And also because it's so fragile inside, I just don't want to put that kind of pressure on. So we're going to look at kind of maybe one side at a time as much as I can do. You can see this side is also very shattered. So there is a bone here. It's been put, yeah, it's been put in the princess seam somehow. I have to get a closer look at this. What the heck? So I think they actually cut open the princess seam down the middle and then like put this bone in and then just kind of wrapped it in there, even though the fabric wasn't quite enough to cover the bone. That's really very strange. The bone has a metal grommet at the top. I can't tell quite what it's made out of because none of the bone is exposed. It's wrapped in something like a factory pressed something, and it does have a really definite bend here, but it's not actually a break. This is a set in bend. If you can see that shape there, try to hold it over the white. It's a real bend where the waist goes, but it's not broken. It's a bend. I don't want to put any pressure on that. And then, so the other princess seam, oh, there's a, there, oh my God. You guys, there is a pin inside this princess seam. Like, fully inside, like the pin head, I can feel it inside the princess seam. Ow! Like, it's still sharp. That would be stabby. Oh my God. I'm really curious if that's been in there since 1890s. By the way, these darts, and when I said princess seam, I keep saying princess seam. I mean dart. These are darts. This is a dart. They've cut it open. They've wrapped it around the bone. This is a dart. These darts are hand sewn. And I'm actually wondering now if this is all hand sewn. I mean, everything. Okay, wait, this dart is either just sewn a lot better with like tiny little stitches, or else it is machine sewn. I'll have to look at the side seams of the dress once I get in there, but everything inside the bodice here is all hand sewn. And I think most of this is original. I can't say for certain, but I think most of it is. So we are now at the side seam over here. We can see this bone a lot better. So this bone has this really interesting, like, little stripy casing here. It is metal topped, at least. Like, it's quite sharp right at the top. It's got kind of pokey out. Let me see if I can see any of the bone, because this casing is opening. It's metal wrapped in paper, wrapped in cloth. That's actually what we've got here. I'm going to zoom in a little more for you. Okay, so this is metal wrapped in paper, wrapped in cloth, this boning, which is really odd. I don't think I've ever seen paper used in any of these before. And the metal, again, is very pokey at the end. You can see just how narrow those little pokey bits are. So there appear to be at least two things of metal that make up the bone. I think it's almost like hoop wire, where you have two wires together, because these wires are sliding individually since they're both poking out. That's really interesting. And that is just a very short side seam bone. I mean, that is 6 3/4 inches, so very short. Whereas the one on the bust dart, I think, is a little longer. It's curvy, so it's a little harder to tell, but no, maybe about the same. Still can't get over that there's a pin inside this dart. So here we have a bone casing. We're looking at the back, side back seam now. There's a bone casing, so there clearly was a bone on here, and the metal grommet is still there, but it must have done what's happened over here where they're slipping, because there's no boning in there. It's just paper and the metal grommets on either end, and then that sort of stripy casing that's going over the bone. And then the center back seam is quite funky, but that's maybe because of the pleats in the back. Because we have a seam here that has almost no seam allowance that has been hand done right here. And then it gets weird. I don't know what's going on here. So one of the things I'm trying to figure out, I mean, for Elsa, it's a little different because I'm really just having like a cape piece. It's a fake sack back. So I don't really know how these are made. I haven't actually looked at that pattern yet, but this is definitely a really weird seam. What's happening here is that, so it's curving here. This seam has like curved in because we've hit the waist, I think right about here, and then it just curves out so that she can get a lot more room over the rear. And I think this goes to a seam. It looks like there's like a hint of a seam that happens. Maybe it's just inside, not in the lining. That's a seam that happens here because there's a definite fold and you can see little prick stitches. So it could also be that the stitches have actually come out of the lining. The lining is pulled away from the stitches because the lining is in poor condition. And so it's actually just through the linen inside the lining. And over here you can see, I mean, that is almost definitely what's happening actually now looking at this side, because over here you can see the cotton lining has just come away completely. And you can see stitches that are going on over here. These are all hand stitches. So we do have a lot of layers in here, and that's what's throwing me off. But that must be as a result of the pleats. Maybe I'll be able to figure that out a little bit more once we flip it over and look at the back. So this other side, we again have a side seam bone. This one really has that curve that we got in the dart bone in the other side. But it's just our little side seam bone. Another bone here in this dart, and again the dart has been split open and then just like super whipped to get that bone to stay in there. But apparently this method works because these two bones seem to be the most secure out of all of the bones that were in here. So I guess if you're looking for a way to put bones in your darts, that's a solution. So yeah, give that a try. Okay, that's about everything from the interior. I think just looking up here at the collar, we can really see where all of the braid is put on, because we've got these nice big old stitches. Well, they're not that huge on this side, but pretty widely spaced stitches, just running stitches to affix that trim. And actually the lining there is no yoke to the lining. The lining is all the way from collar to hem. There's no gap here like there is on the front. If we remember on the front, this is a separate piece right here where the pleats are from the rest of the body of the dress. And on the inside, that is not the case. It's all one piece. So yeah, I think that is about it for the inside of the dress bodice. So let's gently flip her over and take a look at the back. Here is the back of this. So we have our nice collar with the yoke, and then look at this amazing watteau pleat section. I don't know if they called it watteau during this era or not, but it is amazing. Ooh, and I think I just figured out what that weird seam thing was that was going on inside, because lifting these pleats away, some of the stitching has come undone at the center back, and there's just kind of one row of stitching. So originally I think there was a stitch line right here to hold this to the pleat, but now we just have that center back stitching. So I think, I don't want to swear to it, but I think what's going on here is that the center back seam of the dress itself, the body, comes together like this, and there is that seam coming down the center. And then this watteau pleat section gets all pleated up and is put in to that seam, the edges of the pleats. So we have our large watteau pleat section that gets all pleated up. These edges that were out here get folded under and then put into that center back piece. So I think that is what is going on here. It's just a fully, oh crap, did I just, no, I'm wrong. Because there's no seam in the bottom of the dress. The only seam is on the top of the dress. So it's all, what? Okay, this is stumping me a bit. There is no seam down here in this dress. No seam here, it's just a fold. So scratch all that, what I just said. I mean, yes and no, scratch it. So there is a seam up here because we saw it on the inside. There is a seam. So I think what's happening is that the whole center back piece is all a huge piece. There is a seam down the very center back of these pleats. So I guess technically it's all two huge pieces. And those two huge pieces come together. And for the case of like hip down, those pieces just have that one seam and then it's all pleated and stays in place. And really it's just ironed, pleated, and stays in place and flows out behind. Like the lovely tea gown that it is. But the top, because you need shaping in your back, the top winds up getting a cut seam curving in the center back, and actually two cut seams. The top winds up getting a seam, a section that's cut out between the pleated section and here. So again, I don't know construction of this super well. I should apparently take a look at that pattern and see if maybe that's how it's done. But I think that's what's going on here, is that it's almost like it's 4 pieces up here, but 2 pieces down here, because there's been that section cut out. Like kind of like if you have an overly large dart and you cut that out, that's kind of what's happening here. It's like a dart in the back between the pleated section and the actual back section. So anyway, this we'll leave that aside. This over here, this pleated section, as I mentioned, we do have a center back seam here because there's only so wide that your fabric can go. I'm going to measure the hem at the bottom because I feel like this is pretty wide fabric just because how much volume is in here. There are 4 pleats here. I mean, look at that volume. Like, that is incredible. That's a lot in there. And it's all just been turned up and stitched, hand stitched down, I think, up at the top. But they pleated it all up so that it would get gradually wider as it goes out, which is really just lovely. I mean, what a great look for that. And then it's just sewn across. And now at this point, because the fabric is fairly weak, but this braid is nice and strong, what is actually happening is that for a lot of this, it's catching the braid still. It's attached to the braid, but it's not really attached to the back anymore. A lot of that has just kind of torn out. So the braids at the end, these lower braids don't go all the way across, but they go a little bit underneath the pleated section, and the pleated section is kind of hanging onto those braids. So like, I would love to even try to put this on my form, but A, I think it's way too small for the form, and B, it's just too weak. There's too much fabric coming from the shoulders and specifically the back of the neck, that I wouldn't want gravity to allow it to fall, which is really a shame because I would love to see what this looks like flowing. But I just don't think, I think with the size of the shoulders on my form, I think it's too risky to even try to get this on. So unfortunately, I doubt that I will be doing that, because even though she's really torn up, I don't want her to get like worse torn up. The only other thing to show here is that we do have our side back seam over here, those nice curved seams. And otherwise the back seems pretty I don't know, normal. I'm gonna slide her up carefully so that we can get a look at a little bit lower down in the outfit. Okay, so looking a little bit farther down here with the back, the pleats stop being stitched in place right about, just really honestly, right about the waist. Because I think this is our waist right here. And those pleats go maybe 2 inches past that, if that. And only the single middle pleat. Actually, none of the others besides the middle pleat are affixed anywhere except the very top of the neck. These are all just nicely ironed and pressed in place. So, and they have stayed that way for what, 125 years at this point. So hey, good for them. We have our center back seam that again goes all the way down. This pleat has been repaired, so someone has stabilized the bottom of this, and which makes it wind up looking almost like a dart, but someone has just kind of fixed that. All the rest of the pleats just basically free flow into width of the garment, so we wind up getting a lot of body down here, which is really nice. And you know what, it's throwing me off again. You know how I said that it was like it had a dart for dart that you cut open for the center back? Well, apparently it's also doing that on the side back. There's no seam on the skirt of the side back. This has been, I think I actually have seen on the pattern where it's like on, or at least on a pattern where you have the big skirt, you know, rectangle, and then you have out of the top of that, you have bodice pieces that have been cut up separately. I think that's what's going on here, because we have our one center back seam that goes all the way down the center back of the pleats, but this seam for the side back stops right here at the mid hip. It just stops, and then it's a dress. So yeah, that's what's going on here. This from here over is all one piece of fabric. It's so much I'm hardly in the frame. That is so crazy. Oh my gosh. I kind of want to make one of these now. This is just really cool. Okay, well, let's take a look at the hem. It's blowing my mind. Here we are at the hem. There is facing, it's a bias facing that has been put over the top. So basically what's happened is the hem has been folded up. Then there's about 3/8 of an inch, 0.25 inch, both, I think, because it's not quite even. In fact, actually here it goes down to 0 at the center back. That is of the linen skirt. And then we have the bias, and then the bias is whipped onto the cotton. That's what's going on right here. Which is cool to see, because usually you have like, for good reason, usually you have some sort of a tape in these extant garments that covers the actual fold of the hem. This lady did not have a tape, and therefore her hem is torn. This sounds very familiar, because that's what's happening to my blue dress right now, and I have to go over my blue bustle gown with a tape on the hem, because after one wearing out of 2 miles walk around the neighborhood, I did this to my hem. So yeah, this lady did the same thing. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. Okay, so looking at our skirt here, we have, you can see the pleat even was pressed down. This is our farthest out pleat. The remnant of it is pressed down even all the way to the hem, which is very interesting to see. And as far as the width of the fabric, I guess it's honestly not that wide. It just seems like so much width when we're working up at the top and it's all pleated together. But to be honest, our width here is 27.5 plus seam allowances. So I'm not familiar enough with mill loom sizes, weave sizes, of the period, but I mean 28.5. I feel like I've heard that a lot of times fabrics were about 29 or something like that, so that might just have been the entire width of that fabric. But no other facing or anything. It's just the little bias facing. There's no extra body here. It's still our super, super nice lightweight. And actually, you can really see how lightweight this cotton is, because I feel like we can actually see through this. You can see my hand through this cotton. That's how thin this cotton is. And actually, likewise, you can see my hand through the linen as well. The two together, you can't really see my hand, but these are so sheer. This linen is so sheer, so crisp. And then this is sheer and a little crispy, but not nearly as much as the linen. Oh, and we have piecing on our, oh, look at that little patch. Oh my gosh. She's got a little gingham patch inside. That's so sweet. What a funny way. Oh, okay. Well, we'll take a closer look at this on the outside too, but this gingham patch, so she had a big old hole. I think this might be an original hole, honestly, because we've got the gingham patch on the inside that she's like backed her patch onto, but on the outside she had to put in, this is a cotton that's in here in the patch, but it's a matching cotton, and that has been like neatly turned in and whipped down. This is so cute how they've done this little patch, and I just love that it's got a little gingham on the back. How adorable. I mean, I don't know if it dates to the 1890s or if it's more recently than that, but like this was a patch that was done really nicely as opposed to all those ugly Frankensteining stitches that are stabilizing up at the bodice. So that is really cool. Oh, we've also got a gusset over here. This is the center back seam right here. This is our side seam right here, but apparently that was not enough volume because we have a gusset that's going from low hip or below the hip. It's about a hand's width below where the pocket starts. And that gusset is going down all the way to the hem and winds up adding an extra 7 inches in to the side there. So I think I mentioned there's some piecing in the cotton. So there is a piece that's been set in as part of the back. In fact, the cotton must be narrower than the linen because this piece is actually the center back piece. So it was like they tried to go to the center back and then they were like, oh shoot, we're about 5-6 inches short, so let's just put in this strip down the back. Cool, works for me. Yeah, that's fun because I've done that before. So, okay, I'm gonna gently flip her over again. We will take a look at the skirts on the front side. Okay, now we're looking at the skirts on the front side. We have our little patch right here. That was the patch we were looking at before with the gingham on the back, and here's our gusset over here. And otherwise, yeah, so it's all one piece, no center seam or anything even on the front. So let's see if that is the same width as our back, which I think we had at 28.5 inches, including seam allowance, assuming for a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which I don't know if that's true. And our front is the same. So 27.5 inches plus seam allowance. I'm just guessing it's 28.5, but I can't tell how large these seam allowances are. Actually, no, there's one exposed. So yeah, approximately 1/2 inch-ish, maybe even 3/4 inch. So I think we have our 29-inch width again on each panel. So that's 3 panels at 27.5 inches, which is 82.5 inches around, plus our 2 gussets that are 7 inches each. So 96.5 inches around the hem. So there you go. I thought that might be cool information. And this is, again, 1890s, mid-1890s. What's going on with the pocket construction is that, so this bit right here, starting at the braid of the pocket, that is a facing up here. So there's also So the actual fabric of the dress ends right here. And then we have another facing, and then the actual pocket fabric, which is just the cotton of the liner. So because of that, they actually just went and like cut a horizontal line to create that pocket, which I think is kind of like a welt pocket-ish. Maybe there's a different name for this one. But that's all that they've done there. And then they like put their pocket bag inside. And again, I don't know quite how deep that pocket is, because, well, here, this is gentle enough, I think. Whoa! I was wrong. This pocket goes to here. This is an 8-inch deep pocket. Whew! With tiny little narrow tops, because their hands are a lot smaller than my giant hands. Wow! That's quite a pocket. She could really carry around some snacks. Maybe that's why there's so many stains on the front. We can take a look at how big the waist size is. And I think otherwise that's about all there is on this super, super cool piece. But let's just take a look here. Because I don't want to have to undo these hooks and eyes, and because they're really kind of hard to do, I'm just going to lay them on top of each other. So I've got my side seams here. This might be slightly approximate because I just don't want to put any pressure whatsoever on this. Our waist size laid flat is about 12 3/4 inches. There's a little bit of folded here, so it might even be 13. So we're looking at no larger than a 26-inch waist. The bust, we're looking at about 17, so 34-inch bust, 26-inch waist. So approximately. Measuring her entire length, our front measurement is 55.5 inches long from shoulder to hem. So that should give you a good idea. Those are her measurements. 26-inch waist, 34-inch bust, I think is what I said, and 55.5-inch length. Okay, so I gotta be honest, that was actually way cooler than I even anticipated. I feel like I just learned so much by looking at this dress, and honestly, I think my next project after Elsa might be a tea gown / wrapper dress, because wow. And now I have one in my collection, and I think it's gonna be, I'm gonna have to make an 1890s tea gown really, really similar to this, because I mean, like, I'm just blown away by the fact that I have something like this. I don't know, like, I'm going to start trying. It's really, really cool. Since I know I'm probably going to get some questions to this effect, since my roommate also had questions to this effect, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what this dress would have been worn for, and also a little bit about where it might have come from. So this dress I ordered on eBay from a seller that's located in Spokane. Now, that's really not that far from me, because I am in Western Washington. Spokane is in Eastern Washington, so it's just like several hours away, and that means that it's possible, if this dress actually originated in Spokane, that this was basically worn by like a full-on pioneer, because I can't imagine what Spokane was like in the 1890s, but like most of Eastern Washington is practically Wild West right now. It's just lots of great open spaces. So the idea that this could have originated in Spokane is really cool, because this is a lady who lived not that far from here 125 years ago. The other thing that's really interesting about that is that tea gowns were really house dresses. They were worn around the house. So this is something that you would wear to entertain visitors to your house, but it's also something that you might have worn just like, oh, you know, I'm not going out today, so let me just put on this tea gown and go about my business. Now, some tea gowns, some people wore them without corsets, some people wore them with corsets, and you would wear them still usually over your other undergarments, you know, your chemise, your, in this era, you'd have like split crotch drawers, or maybe combinations, could have had combinations this early, probably a petticoat, maybe even a corset cover if you're wearing a corset. So you would still wear it over your undergarments, but this was really for wearing around the house. I don't think anyone wore tea gowns out. If anyone says that's not true, please tell me. But this is a house dress. This is for wearing around your house. So the idea that like some lady was wearing this around like her house in the Wild West, that's really, really cool. And it also kind of explains why it's kind of a really like homespunny linen feel. And also Spokane gets really freaking hot in the summer. So it makes sense as to why she'd want something really nice and lightweight to be able to wear around her house. That makes really good sense. And so I don't know, it kind of like brings it closer to home, and I think that is just so, so cool. This is honestly only my third outfit that I have, my third piece that I have that is a full shoulder to hem piece even. I've got the 1860s striped dress, which I think was my first extant video that I did for you guys, so I'll link that here and in the description if you haven't seen that one yet. And then I have not filmed yet, I do have an 1890s walking suit, silk walking suit, so that's one that will come in some future video if I stop buying so many things on eBay that I can't film all of the pieces that I already have. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. So anyway, I thought this was just really, really cool. I hope you really enjoyed this, because I got just so kind of flabbergasted over this whole piece. It was just like, wow, mind blown. And I had so much fun taking a look at this and really like unboxing it and exploring it with you. So I do think that I will stick to this format for future purchases from eBay. That way we can all just kind of discover it together, because it just feels a little more exciting. That said, if you don't like this format, please let me know down below. If you would rather that I learn about the garment first and then share it with you, let me know, because I want to do the format that you prefer. This was really fun. Thank you so much for joining me. If you liked this video, please make sure that you click the thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, well, for one thing, you can check out my extant garment playlist, which I will link down in the description box below. I've got, what, 4 or 5 videos there already, I think, and I'm doing one video approximately every month, so do check out the playlist. But also, please subscribe to me. I put out videos like this once a month, but I put out videos once a week. So if you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a video. And while I post once a week here, I post once a day over on Instagram. So please go follow me on Instagram at Lady Rebecca Fashions. I had so much fun doing this. I really hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in my next video. Happy sewing!